Please read over the handouts concerning the Radial Design project. We'll take you through drawing your radial design, outlining your radial design, coloring worksheet, and adding base layers and colored pencil shading to your final drawing. Alright, the first step in creating your radial design is using a 4.5 inch by 4.5 sheet of tracing paper. I'm going to go ahead and mark the halfway points because I want to break this thing into thirds. So this entire square I'm going to break into thirds. You can do it however you'd like. I'm just going to do sort of 3 pies here. So straight lines from a corner. In one of these sections I need to draw 3 wavy lines. Your lines can go whichever direction you'd like. They can cross paths if you want, but you need to have 3 in one section. In another section, you need to have a minimum of 5 circles. You can use a circle stencil to draw 5 circles. If you do not have a circle stencil available, then you can use some coins if you need to. So there's a quarter. All or part of the circles need to be visible in this section. And the last section is you're going to draw 2 interwoven strips. And to do this, we're trying to make it look like it's 2 strips that are weaving in and out of each other. So I'm actually drawing, there's 3 strips and there's the 4th strip. If we take a closer look here, in order to make the illusion that these are overlapping, we have to do some erasing. So I want to make this strip look like it's overlapping the one below it. So I erase these 2 lines here. So now it appears that this strip is going over top of the one below it. For the next one, I wanted it to appear that it's going underneath the strip. So kind of a weave pattern. So I'm erasing those 2 lines. So now it goes over and under. And I'm going to go ahead and do the opposite for this section here. So it's going to actually go under and then over top. So that is an intersecting weave. I have a 9 inch by 9 inch sheet of white sulfite paper. And what I'm going to do first is take my ruler and I'm going to measure over 4.5 inches from the left side. I'm going to go ahead and move my ruler down to the bottom. And we're going to measure over 4.5 inches again. Put a mark. And go ahead and connect those 2 marks with a straight line, and it will bisect our paper into halves. Next, I'm going to measure down from the top 4.5 inches on the left side and the right side. I'm going to go ahead and connect those lines so that it divides the paper into 4 equal squares. Each square is 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches, which is the same size as our tracing paper. Now we're going to decide how we want to make this radial design. So you want to put a corner in the front, and you can kind of get a good idea of what the design looks like by flipping the tracing paper. And there's a bunch of options here. I may want to put the stripes or the wavy lines in the center and flip them over, so it kind of forms a diamond shape in the center. Or I could use the circles, the corner of the circles in the center. So it's whichever way you choose. I kind of like it so that the corner of the weave is in the center. Okay, so we want to get our design onto the white paper. And the easiest way to do this is to flip your tracing paper over on the back, and you're actually going to take your pencil and put a pretty thick coating on the back of all of your lines. You don't really need to use a ruler for this, but you do want to try to get a really thick coat on each line that you drew, because we're going to be flipping this paper several times. Your circles don't necessarily have to be accurate, but you want to make sure you've got pencil on the lines. So now I'm going to take my tracing paper and I'm going to put a little F here for front, so I know what the front of the tracing paper is and which is the back. So I place my tracing paper in the top left square, and I'm going to hold it still. If you'd like to put a piece of tape on this to hold it down, you can, and I'm basically simply just going to trace the front of this. And what should happen is the pencil that I put on back will rub off onto the white paper underneath the tracing paper. And this is called the transfer process. So when I lift this up, voila, there it is, it's magical. Now to get the top right square, I'm going to go ahead and flip my tracing paper over so that the front is facing down, because I want this to be a radial design, so it's symmetrical, it's the opposite. And once again, I'm going to hold this in place and I'm going to trace it. And the pencil that's on the front now should transfer to the white paper. I'm going to go ahead and flip it one more time. Transfer. And flip it over for the last square. And what should happen is that you have a radial design, a design that's symmetrical. It radiates out from the center of the paper in all directions. Alright, so you might not be able to see some of your lines, so it might be a good idea to take a pencil and kind of go back over them so you can see them. And once you've done that, you're going to take an outlining pen and you want to use a ruler and stencil wherever possible. So on straight lines, you want to make sure that you use a ruler. Otherwise, you defeat the purpose of using a ruler. So when you outline, you want to use the ruler as well. Take your time looking for clean, smooth lines. Again, you want to try to match the sizes of your circles. Nice, smooth, even outlines. Take an eraser and you can erase the rest of the pencil. You want to go ahead and outline the entire drawing so that it looks like this. Nice, clean, symmetrical drawing. Okay, here is an example of the shading worksheet, how to color with colored pencils. We want to apply a base layer in a lighter color by smoothly coloring the entire box. Next, we're going to add a darker shadow layer, coloring from dark to light over top of the base layer. So first step is to take and we're going to color a base layer. And I'm using what's called the crosshatch method. So my pencil strokes are really, really close together and I'm moving very slowly. My pressure is pretty light to medium pressure. I don't want this to appear to be waxy. Waxy is when you press too hard and you get kind of a sheen or a shine to your coloring. It's really hard to layer colored pencils if it's waxy. So right now my strokes are going left to right, and I'm going to go ahead and cross-hatch this by going up and down. Again, keeping my strokes really close together. I'm trying to get a nice smooth base coat. So my strokes aren't far apart like that. That's bad. We want them to be really close together. That is waxy. That is bad. So we want nice and soft, smooth base layers. And the cross-hatching method is a nice way to add base layers if you need to cross the strokes 3 or 4 times. That's okay, as long as you get it nice and smooth. Again, keep the pencil sharp and strokes really close together to get a nice smooth base layer. That's my base is orange. Now I need to add a shadow color of red. And so I'm taking a red pencil and we want to shade it over the base layer from dark to light. No waxy applications. So basically I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm pressing pretty firm, not super firm, but I'm easing the pressure off of the pencil as I move to the right. I'm going to keep my strokes really close together, but I want this to fade from dark on the left to light on the right side. So as I move towards the right, I'm just easing the pressure off of the pencil. The closer you keep your pencil strokes, the better this will look, the more shaded it will look. Again, you can always go back over it just to fill in stroke lines if need be. So it goes from dark to light. I'm going to go back and put another layer on, pressing a little bit harder this time just to develop the dark left side, and again I want it to fade out. So again, base colors are flat and smooth, and shading is dark to light. And here's a finished example of a worksheet. Okay, so once you've finished your shading worksheet, you're ready to start to color your design. For instruction purposes, I've only outlined one section of my drawing here. The first thing that we want to do is we want to color this entire thing in just our base layers. Okay, it gives you a good feel for how to use the pencil, and it's good practice for the application. Again, I'm keeping my strokes really close together. They're going in the same direction, and I'm using the crosshatch method. Okay, I just want this to appear nice and smooth and even. There's no shading at all on here. For the interwoven strip section, again, I'm just going to pick an orange color, and I want to make this a smooth base color. Keeping my pencil strokes really close together and in the same direction. Coloring directions are outlined in detail in the project handouts that were shown at the beginning of this video. So make sure you read those carefully and apply the color as the directions specify. And for the wavy line section, I'm going to just add a purple base layer. And this is an image of just the base layers colored on the finished drawing. So just the base layers, no shading. Okay, next we want to add some shading to our base colors. And again, instructions are printed out on the handouts that were shown at the beginning of this video. So for the circles, we're supposed to shade dark to light around the outside edge of the circles. So I'm taking a darker green color. This would be called layering colored pencil, and I'm layering it over top of the base layer. Right now it kind of looks outlined, and I want to try to fade this towards the center because it needs to be a little bit lighter in the center. So what I'm doing is I'm taking and coloring in really tiny circles around that edge where the dark green and the lighter green meet to kind of make this fade in towards the center. I'm varying my pressure just slightly, really light touch, and I want this to fade in so it has a darker green edge to it. You want to apply this shading to all of your circles. For the interwoven strips, you're basically just going to add a shadow to enhance the overlap effect. And I'm going to take a red here and I'm just lightly shading it from dark to light so that it appears that this strip is casting a shadow on the strip below it. Really simple. You don't have to shade it very far out, maybe a ½ inch or so. And the shading on the wavy line section, basically we're just going to put a darker edge along the wavy line. I'm using the same color purple, I'm just pressing a little bit harder. And again, we want to try to make this fade. So I'm going to use those little tiny circle strokes where the dark purple and the light purple meet. And I want this to fade out, so I'm doing a light pressure here. And this should add some contrast to your coloring. And here is a finished project with base layers and shaded colors on top of the base layers. Let's take a look at a visual assessment rubric which shows projects that exceed, meet, and do not meet expectations. This project has even outlines, close strokes, base layers are really nice and neat, and shading is nice and smooth. This project, the base layers are pretty smooth, the outlines are mostly even, but the shading is a little bit uneven. This project meets expectations. This project does not meet expectations. A ruler was not used on the outlines, the base layers are not smooth, and there is no shading evident. Projects will be graded using the following rubric. Drawing. Make sure that all items are drawn as required by the handout. Outlining. Outlines need to be clean and smooth, similar thickness, and rulers and stencils must be used. Base layers should be nice and smooth with a light application, not waxy. Remember, cross-hatching is a good way to make them appear smooth. And lastly, shading. Colors need to be shaded atop of the base layers according to the directions that were shown at the beginning of this video.